Welcome to Pages from History, where the echoes of ancient empires come alive once more. If you seek knowledge of the battles that shaped civilization, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell. Today, we present the fall of Hannibal, the battle that changed history forever. For 16 years, one man made Rome tremble with fear. Now witness his final stand on the burning sands of Africa. Stay with us until the very end to discover how the greatest general of antiquity met his destiny. First, the road to Zama, Rome strikes back. The year was 203 BC, and Rome had endured 16 years of devastating warfare against the Carthaginian menace. Italian fields lay scorched and abandoned, cities reduced to rubble, and entire generations of Roman youth had perished beneath Carthaginian swords. Yet from this crucible of suffering emerged a new breed of Roman commander, one who would carry vengeance across the sea. Publius Cornelius Scipio stood upon the African shore, his crimson cloak billowing in the Mediterranean wind. Behind him stretched the greatest Roman army ever assembled for overseas conquest, 40,000 hardened veterans thirsting for retribution. The sands of North Africa would soon drink deeply of Carthaginian blood. Scipio had studied Hannibal's tactics with obsessive dedication throughout his military career. At Cannae, he had witnessed the double envelopment that destroyed 8 Roman legions in a single afternoon of slaughter. Now he would turn those same brilliant strategies against their creator on foreign soil. The Roman general had already proven his genius in the Iberian campaigns against Carthaginian forces. He had captured New Carthage through audacious planning and defeated Hannibal's brothers in pitched battle. Spain, once Carthage's treasure house, now flew the eagle standards of Rome triumphant. Carthage's ruling council watched in horror as Roman legions marched ever closer to their sacred city. The great trading metropolis that had dominated the western Mediterranean for centuries now faced annihilation at its gates. Panic spread through streets that had known only prosperity and power. Desperate merchants and senators sent urgent messages across the sea to their greatest champion still in Italy. Only Hannibal Barca possessed the military genius necessary to save their beloved homeland from Roman destruction. The council begged him to abandon his Italian campaign immediately. Hannibal received the summons in his camp at Croton, the last foothold of his once mighty army in Italy. 16 years of brilliant victories had come to nothing, for he had never possessed the strength to capture Rome itself. Now he must defend the very city he had sworn to protect. The Carthaginian general gathered his veterans, men who had crossed the Alps and survived countless battles against Roman legions. These warriors had followed him through ice and fire, victory and hardship beyond measure. They would follow him still to whatever fate awaited in Africa. Ships carried Hannibal's army across the narrow sea to the land of his birth and ancestors. He had left Carthage as a boy of 9, swearing eternal hatred of Rome at his father's altar. Now he returned as a man of 45 to fight his final campaign. Second, 2 titans meet, the failed peace. The 2 greatest generals of the ancient world finally stood face to face on the dusty plain. Hannibal Barca, the terror of Rome, and Scipio Africanus, the hope of the Republic, met between their armies. History held its breath as these titans of warfare exchanged words of diplomacy. Hannibal appeared older than his years, weathered by decades of ceaseless campaigning across 3 continents. His single remaining eye, having lost the other to infection during the Italian campaigns, blazed with undiminished intelligence. The legendary general still radiated an aura of command that made lesser men tremble. Scipio stood tall and confident, a Roman aristocrat in his prime of 33 years. His armor gleamed in the African sun, polished to mirror brightness by devoted servants before dawn. Youth and certainty radiated from every gesture he made. The Carthaginian general spoke first, offering terms that would have seemed generous just years before this moment. Carthage would surrender Spain, the Mediterranean islands, and her entire war fleet to Roman authority forever. Peace could be achieved without further bloodshed between their exhausted peoples. Scipio listened with the patience of a man who knew time favored his position absolutely. Roman reinforcements arrived daily, while Carthaginian allies melted away like morning frost in summer sun. The young general had no reason to accept anything less than total victory. The Roman commander rejected Hannibal's proposals with diplomatic courtesy but unmistakable firmness in his voice. Rome demanded unconditional surrender and massive indemnities that would cripple Carthage for generations to come. There would be no negotiated peace between their nations. Hannibal nodded slowly, recognizing in Scipio the same iron determination that had driven his own career. The Carthaginian had hoped to spare his city through negotiation, but the gods decreed otherwise for both nations. Tomorrow would settle what words could not. Both generals returned to their armies, knowing that battle was now inevitable and final. Priests sacrificed animals to their respective gods throughout both camps that evening before sunset. The omens spoke of blood and glory in equal measure. That night, 80,000 men prepared themselves for combat that would determine the fate of civilizations. Soldiers sharpened swords, checked armor straps, and whispered prayers to deities of war and protection. Dawn would bring either triumph or death. Third, dawn of battle, armies collide. The sun rose blood-red over the plain of Zama on that October morning of destiny long ago. Dust clouds marked the movement of armies taking their positions across the barren landscape for battle. The air itself seemed to crackle with the tension of impending violence. Hannibal arranged his forces in 3 distinct lines stretching across the African plain before him. His first line consisted of 12,000 mercenaries from Gaul, Liguria, and the Balearic Islands recruited hastily. Behind them stood Carthaginian citizen levies and African troops loyal to the empire. The third and final line contained Hannibal's most precious asset from his Italian campaigns. These were his veterans, the survivors of the Alps crossing and 16 years of war against Rome. They stood like a wall of bronze and iron, unmoved by fear. 80 war elephants formed a terrifying screen before the Carthaginian infantry formations. These massive beasts had trampled countless enemies beneath their feet throughout Hannibal's career of conquest. Their trumpeting filled the morning air with sounds of primal terror. Scipio positioned his legions in an unusual formation, specifically designed to counter the elephant threat before him. Instead of the traditional checkerboard pattern, he arranged his maniples in straight columns with wide lanes between them. The elephants would charge into empty corridors of death. Roman velites, the light skirmishers of the legion, stood ready with javelins and trumpets of their own. Their orders were simple, but crucial to the battle plan Scipio had devised through long study. Drive the elephants mad with noise and missiles until they fled. The signal horn sounded across both armies simultaneously, as if the gods themselves commanded battle to begin. A great roar erupted from 80,000 throats as men surged forward toward their enemies. The ground trembled beneath the weight of charging armies. Hannibal's elephants thundered toward the Roman lines with earth-shaking force and terrible majesty. The beasts seemed unstoppable, massive gray mountains of muscle and fury bearing down on mortal men. Roman soldiers watched death approach on 4 legs. But Scipio's preparation proved devastatingly effective against the elephant assault as planned. Blaring trumpets panicked the beasts, while javelins found their sensitive flesh, and the wide lanes gave them escape. Many elephants turned and trampled their own Carthaginian allies. Fourth, the turning point. Cavalry returns. The infantry battle raged with terrible fury as the first lines of both armies clashed in clouds of dust and blood. Mercenaries fought with desperate courage against Roman legionaries, hardened by years of brutal warfare. Steel rang against steel in an endless symphony of death. Hannibal's mercenary first line began to crumble under the relentless pressure of Roman discipline and training. These hired soldiers lacked the cohesion and determination of the legions they faced across bloody ground. They started falling back toward their own second line. The Carthaginian second line, composed of African levies and city troops, refused to open ranks for their retreating comrades. Whether through orders or panic, they presented a solid wall to men seeking refuge behind them. Chaos erupted between the two Carthaginian formations. Mercenaries turned upon the troops who denied them passage, and fighting erupted within Carthaginian ranks themselves tragically. Roman soldiers watched in amazement as their enemies began slaughtering each other before their eyes. Hannibal's army was destroying itself. Scipio pulled back his bloodied first line and reformed his legions for the decisive assault yet to come. Fresh troops from the rear ranks moved forward, while wounded veterans found brief respite from combat. Roman organization proved superior to Carthaginian chaos. Meanwhile, the cavalry battle had swept far from the main infantry engagement across the African plain. Ramang and Numidian allied horsemen pursued their Carthaginian counterparts from miles away from Zama's field. Massinissa, the Numidian king, led his riders with fierce determination. Hannibal watched the horizon with growing dread, knowing that cavalry would decide this battle's outcome ultimately. His own horsemen had been driven from the field, leaving his flanks dangerously exposed to enemy attack. Everything depended on whether they could return in time. The two infantry forces reformed and faced each other across a field carpeted with the dead and dying. Hannibal's veterans stood unmoved, their bronze armor gleaming, their discipline unbroken despite surrounding disaster. These were the finest soldiers Carthage had ever produced. Scipio's legionaries advanced once more, their short swords gleaming, their faces set with grim determination. The final clash would determine everything that both nations had fought for across 17 bloody years. Victory or death awaited. Fifth, the fall of Carthage, a new world order. The veteran lines crashed together with a sound like thunder rolling across the African plains of Zama. These were evenly matched warriors, survivors of countless battles, the elite of both civilizations meeting in mortal combat. Neither side gave ground in that terrible struggle. For hours, the battle hung in perfect balance as the finest soldiers of two empires fought with equal fury. Bodies piled high between the formations as men fell and others stepped forward to take their places. The sun climbed toward its zenith over fields of slaughter. Then dust clouds appeared on the horizon behind Hannibal's struggling army, growing larger with each passing moment. Riders emerged from the haze, thousands of horsemen returning from their pursuit of Carthaginian cavalry. Massinissa had returned at the crucial moment. The Numidian and Roman cavalry struck Hannibal's veterans from behind with devastating force and precision. Caught between the hammer of cavalry and the anvil of Roman infantry, the Carthaginians began to die in droves. The trap closed with merciless efficiency. Hannibal watched his army disintegrate around him as Roman horsemen carved through his formations from every direction. 20,000 Carthaginians fell on that bloody field, and 20,000 more were taken prisoner by their enemies. Only a handful escaped the slaughter. The great general himself fled the battlefield with a small escort of loyal followers who refused to abandon him. 16 years of war, hundreds of thousands dead, and the dreams of Carthaginian Empire all ended in one afternoon. Hannibal Barca had finally been defeated. Scipio Africanus stood victorious among the carnage as the sun set over Zama's blood-soaked plain forever. He had accomplished what no Roman commander before him had achieved against Hannibal's military genius in battle. Rome's greatest enemy was broken at last. Carthage sued for peace under crushing terms that stripped away her empire and military power entirely. Massive indemnities would drain her treasury for 50 years, and her war fleet was burned before weeping citizens. A great civilization had fallen. The Mediterranean world now belonged to Rome, and nothing would stop her rise to universal empire across 3 continents. The Battle of Zama marked the true beginning of Roman domination that would last for centuries to come. History had turned upon a single day. And so ends the story of Hannibal's final battle, where the greatest general of antiquity met defeat on the plains of his homeland. The Battle of Zama changed the course of history, ending Carthaginian power and establishing Rome as master of the ancient world. Two titans clashed, and only one could emerge victorious. If this journey through history moved you, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to Pages from History and activate the notification bell to join us on future expeditions into the ancient past. Until next time, remember that every page of history holds lessons for those willing to read.